also this week, as an outcome of what has been happening, a teen boy, Kyle Rittenhouse, who was 17, shot 3 people and killed 2 of them. There has been a lot of scrutiny over whether or not it was justified. He was called a white supremacist, but I also heard that he was at least of Mexican descent, if not Mexican. The 3 people he shot were all white. One of them was a rapist, the other one was a felon, and the third might have been a felon, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, one of them, I think, was someone who was literally just ordinary citizen trying to stop him from moving on from his thing. I didn't hear a whole lot about their backgrounds of people who were getting killed.
So the bald one was a rapist. And then the second one had a gun that he legally wasn't allowed to own, which I also want to specify this. Kyle himself wasn't supposed to have a gun.
Yes.
That needs to be made.
Yeah.
Which he is legally allowed to defend himself if he is in the threat of imminent death. And so we will talk about that. The semantics.
We'll talk about the specifics of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Is this like race led? Like, is this driven by race?
I wouldn't say directly, no. I mean, I think it would probably it wouldn't come from, like, I don't think his killings of those people were racially motivated. Obviously not, because most of them were, I think white. I think you did point to, him being partially of Mexican descent, therefore says that he's not, a white nationalist or white supremacist. I mean,
that would make him a Mexican nationalist.
Well, no, he can still, believe in the superiority of white people. Yeah, he can still see that. I mean, technically, Nick Fuentes, if he has partially Mexican heritage. So clearly, they're not free from those type of beliefs. But I think when we're looking at it from that sense, there are multiple key things to think about here. One of them is, yes, you are correct that he was 17 years old and he could not legally open carry with that firearm in the state of Wisconsin. You also had to be 21 years old in the state of Illinois to have what is called a FOID, or a firearms owner identification card, in order to operate that. So it wasn't even if he was 18 technically, in order for him to operate that firearm or get that firearm from Illinois, he would have to have that. Another interesting thing is Wisconsin does not have a stand your ground law, meaning that you don't have the right, if someone is coming at you, if they are not, directly displaying, whether it comes to, like, apparently one person threw like a Coke bottle at him and something, and then he was running away, and then he turned around and shot them. Technically that cannot be, in a sense, justified, because there's one, proportionality of defense, and also there is no stand your ground law in the state of Wisconsin. So that's important.
There is, however, there is laws in place, though, against harming or inflicting violence upon a minor, to where that is a felony, from what I've seen, because the one guy looked like he was trying to curb stomp him, and then the other one was trying to hit him in the head with a skateboard.
Yeah.
And so one was a rapist, so he killed the rapist, and he also killed the felon. And so I do think we should specify that.
Are you referring
to the rape? Having a gun as a minor that you're legally not allowed to have as a misdemeanor. It's not a felony.
Okay, for sure. But I'm curious, do we know for a fact? I mean, I'm also wondering why it's relevant that the people he killed were were those legally proven that they were rapists, and
he was on the. I can pull up the picture of the list. I'll display it on the podcast.
From what I understand, the guy he shot in the head was a sex offender.
Yeah, the bald guy.
He molested
he might just be a
kid.
Sex offender. Okay, yeah, he is a rapist then.
For sure. Okay. And that's terrible. I don't think the solution to that is have vigilante justice and a dude coming out here shooting these people. I don't, in my opinion, I'm going to be completely blunt here. I don't think it's relevant. The same way I don't think the fact that Jacob Blake was, had a warrant out for sexual assault means that, it was justified for him to be shot 7 times. The same. So I think it's equally, it's unfortunate. It's no one is trying to celebrate that, but I think when those extraneous details are brought up to try to minimize, the horrific nature of what happened, it's unfortunate, and I think it just speaks to us trying to sometimes avoid an issue with other external variables.
Yeah. To me, it's not necessarily. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, for me, I think he did mostly everything right. The issue with me is the reason why he was there. Because he was defending a business that wasn't his.
Which is illegal.
Yes. But looking at it just with the straight issue of him being attacked, it was clear that it was just self-defense. Even though he was having, a rifle that wasn't his. I mean, he was 17 and he was illegally carrying a firearm around, from what I understand.
Okay. I don't know. I personally don't think you leaving your entire state with an illegal firearm to go protect a business is self-defense. I think that constitutes, hunting.
What I meant by that was like ignoring, like just focusing on what happened when he was attacked. Just in that little, like, put that in a vacuum. He was in self-defense when they were attacking him.
But that was after he was brandishing the firearm at multiple protesters. I mean, he had a firearm and was walking around,
We obviously didn't see the whole scenario, but
yeah.
If we want to get into that, we can go about it going into his intention, because what I've heard, and I did see a video of beforehand, he was going around helping people because he proclaimed to be an EMT, and he was trying to help people that were hurt from protesting. I do think that this is self-defense, though, because one person did pull a gun on him, and I will display the image of the person holding the gun pointing it directly at him.
Correct.
And so if I don't necessarily care if you have a gun illegally, because sure, he should be punished for that. He should get the misdemeanor.
Yeah.
But if there is a gun next to you and somebody pulls a gun on you, you have all the right to shoot them. Like if you are them and they're the one inflicting damage.
That was my point, more or less.
Mm-hmm. The issue was after he already shot the person who threw whatever it was at him. It was chasing him. So after you fire at someone in the state of Wisconsin, because that would not be considered self-defense, because there is proportionality of a defense. If someone is running at you and there's no weapon, you are not able to just shoot them.
The one guy had the gun out the whole time. He just didn't start shooting and firing back until the one guy had already fired.
He didn't. He wasn't involved in the situation until after the whole thing involving the soda can being thrown at
I think
him
he's
and
talking
him
about
firing.
I think you're talking about the sex offender guy, right? The bald guy?
Well, the bald guy wasn't the one with the gun. The other felon was the one with the gun.
I'm aware, but the one who threw the thing at him and was chasing him, that situation transpired. He fired at him, then he was down, and people started yelling, he shot someone, he shot someone. That's when, whoever you're talking about, the felon with the gun, ended up getting involved and was involved there. So as soon as you shoot someone, especially in Wisconsin, there's no stand your ground law, there's no involvement with that, there was not a proportionality, you become an active shooter. So people
I think the gun had been pulled regardless before that had even happened, because the guy was targeting him regardless.
Yes, he was targeting after he had shot.
Well, what I'm saying is I think he had the gun pulled before he had shot.
Not him, but the other guy, the bald guy. The bald guy who threw the Coke can.
I think that's what you're talking about. That video is very unclear. Like the video I saw, it was very distant, and all I heard was gunshots, and then he called 911 trying to help the guy, but the bald guy was like dead before he hit the floor.
For sure. I think what's interesting about this too is police response. I mean, if we're looking at this from, a difference between, I don't want to go too far back to Jacob Blake, but if we're looking at that scenario versus this one, when we're talking about this scenario, he was walking down the street with his hands like this, with the gun strapped across his chest, and was walking, and basically as people were yelling, he shot people to the police officers that were passing, they just drove right by. They drove right by, and they had no idea whatsoever at all.
Well, from what I heard, didn't care. It happened so fast, and then the cops didn't know exactly what happened.
Well, why'd they let him get all the way to Illinois? I mean, they had him multiple times. He was literally talking to them after the scene. Oh,
I didn't know that. He drove all the way to Illinois, and it was Wisconsin, right? Yeah. Okay.
Correct. And then they arrested him the next day in Illinois. So I think it's interesting. It's very interesting, and you've probably heard this before, and I think this really speaks volumes, but looking at the way that police just respond differently to whether it be African-American suspects and whether it be, white suspects, whether it be Dylan Roof or someone of that sort who was, brought out in handcuffs after he, shot up a school, stuff of that sort. I'm forgetting some of the other names, but these people, police find a way to peacefully respect these people's humanity and still bring them to justice. I mean, what was it? Many different people have been brought out peacefully in handcuffs, and that just was not seen with, Jacob
I think
Blake.
The difference in the context was that the Jacob Blake was called on by police, right, to arrest him because he had an active warrant.
And he refused arrest.
And he refused arrest, whereas with Kyle Rittenhouse, it was very soon. people were saying he shot someone, but it was kind of in the confusion of the riots and looting, and police were already busy with that too. Also, it seems like to me Kyle is way more compliant with the police than Jacob Blake was.
Well, he was so compliant with the police because the police were compliant with him. If we look at videos, there are videos of before this entire thing transpiring. So basically, I forgot what the name of the group was called. I wish I would have had this pulled up, but it was a militia group, and they basically sent out a Facebook invitation to everyone around Facebook talking about how and they sent like a personal request to the Kenosha Police Department. Let us help you. You are going to be outnumbered. So basically, the Kenosha Police Department was complicit in allowing this private vigilante militia group to be enforcing the law, which obviously is not allowed, and then was literally just giving them water and saying, thank you, we're going to send. And then one of the people was on tape saying that they're going to send the protesters and people down to you. So, I mean, I'll send you guys if you want after this, or I can send some of this to Sawyer, and maybe he can actually display some of this on the podcast page. But it's really interesting when you're looking at how the police are complying with certain people who should not, by law, being able to be complied with, considering that they are not well-trained police officers. They have no background in law enforcement, and yet they're just being brought upon to, qualm these, protests. So I think it's really interesting. And
well, you know what the cops told us today? They were like, we're going to push them down by you because you can deal with them, and then we're going to leave.
And then that also speaks to, I don't know if you saw what Tucker Carlson said, that somehow what this kid did was justified because there's just absolute anarchy in the streets, and how, it makes sense that this kid felt that he had to defend his streets when he was from, obviously Illinois. So I think
were the Kenosha police called out during the city? Because I know some police forces didn't respond to certain rioting and looting during certain cities.
What do you mean, like certain parts of Kenosha?
Well, like, I know some cities that police were pulled out of certain towns or cities because of rioting and looting, because they wanted to support the, like the whole movement for Black Lives Matter and stuff.
There was not a huge backlash from the Kenosha City Police Department. There has been a lot of administrative things going on within the police department. The officers involved with Jacob Blake being put on leave, administrative leave, while the FBI does an individual investigation here. But no, it's not like the Kenosha Police Department just completely backed out. I mean, they were heavily involved within the entire situation, the multiple nights, and including the night with the teenager, 17-year-old. So yeah.
Well, I understand the sentiment when it comes to wanting to protect property, even though I disagree with his intention of protecting someone else's property. Mm-hmm. Like the problem is that when police can't respond to rioting and looting and people burning small businesses that have no connection to the problem, then it causes people to want to rise up and protect their property and other people's properties.
All right. So, but let's discuss this practically. And you said this. Does someone drive all the way from Illinois to a town that they don't know to protect other people's property? I mean, can we acknowledge if someone comes with a semi-automatic weapon to a protest from another state, they're like itching to shoot someone. Like it doesn't make logical sense to do so otherwise. And we can see on his social media pics, he was a avid supporter of Blue Lives Matter and, law enforcement and stuff of that sort. So it's Sawyer was talking about putting 2 and 2 together before. I don't think it's hard to put 2 and 2 together before that this kid was not that worried. And even his mom was complicit in like driving him to the place. So I think
I don't agree with his intention either. I'm just saying in general, in terms of, I get the sentiment in terms of protecting property, because
absolutely.
I saw a comment. I just want to say, I saw a comment with someone saying like, oh, it's okay. They can burn the property and they can use their insurance to repay for it.
No.
Yeah, like first of all, insurance rates go up after that.
I agree.
And then two, it takes months to rebuild. By that time, it takes 6-7 months, most likely, at best, to rebuild. You already lose so much profits and most likely will go out of business.
Absolutely.
And it's not their property in the first place. But we do need to specify, regardless, I understand that this may not have a lot of relevance, but a sex offender rapist charged him and started the action of violence by throwing his kid.
He didn't know that. He didn't know he was a sex offender.
Regardless, he's still being attacked.
Okay,
I have heard from liberal sources though that there is a video before this that makes him look bad, but until we get that video out, if it is real and not fabricated, we will learn more about this.
I just don't think him being a sex offender rapist has anything to do with this. Partially
what
because
it has to do with this, the relevance of it is he was charging him, and so then that usually crosses out intention.
But okay, but that doesn't. Okay, if someone is coming and they're part of a group, one, because this dude was part of the militia group, or he was with the militia group before this happened and was talking with police. So obviously you see a bunch of people with large weapons, across their chest talking with police officers. That's going to stir up a little bit of conversation within, whether it be the protest community and them as well. And then he comes back. Obviously, yes, I don't agree with the dude who charged him and threw a Coke bottle at him, but you don't get to shoot someone because they charge you and throw a Coke bottle at you. That's not how this works. You can disagree with that personally, but in the state of Wisconsin, when we're looking at it legally, that's not how stand your ground works. There's no stand your ground law. So it was unlawful what he did to shoot this person. It was literally, it will be charged as murder in the state of Wisconsin, because that's what it would be charged
Well,
as.
I think it changes with violence inflicted upon a minor, because that's where
he's being charged as an adult,
which is a felony, which is unfair because he's not an adult.
Yeah, I guess that's going to be a prosecutorial decision. I mean, I don't want to get too far into this, but if we look in the criminal justice system, primarily African Americans are charged 4 to 5 years higher and treated in the law enforcement system, in the criminal justice system, as older than they are. So, I mean, I'm not saying that makes this justified, but I'm saying this is a common thing what happens within law enforcement, especially with this kid who's 17. I think that you can look at this from multiple different perspectives and find different ways to come to solutions.
But for somebody to have a gun, and it's presumably he owned it legally, because you don't have any proof otherwise until we saw what happened.
He didn't have a FOID. It had to be illegal.
And so regardless, there is a man out there with a gun. Charging him is not not the solution. I don't think that that's justified.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not
saying
saying
somebody
it is.
Open carry.
I'm not saying that he should have charged him. I'm saying that just because he charged him doesn't justify him unloading the gun on him in the state of Wisconsin. Legally, that is not
unless it's violence inflicted upon a minor, though. Because I did hear a lawyer give a breakthrough of this.
Violence inflicted upon a minor that allows him to unload. But this is interesting though, because violence inflicted upon a minor, what is the protocol there? Because it wouldn't say that the minor can unload a gun on them, because a minor can't own a gun anyway. So it's not like this would necessarily work, because they could never have that gun in the first place. Therefore, could this law apply to the situation, considering that they're not expecting the minor to have a semi-automatic weapon, because that's not in part of the law either. So I think that has to be looked at if that law can be applied the same way.
That's where
I think there was. Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think there was like mistakes on both sides with Kyle and with, the looters attacking him. I feel like with the bald guy, it was very ambiguous. I think it was in self-defense. However, that's my personal opinion. However, with the guys running after him and attacking him, like the skateboard guy and the guy, especially with the guy with the gun, I feel like he was definitely in the right in terms of shooting back at them.
Well, the skateboard guy was just trying to stop him from shooting other people. I mean, if we're looking at it from that sense, he's already shot one person who literally just threw a Coke bottle at him and then was running after him.
I tried to curb stomp him as well. A curb stomp is like a fatal illness, like where you get your teeth broken and your head stomped.
Yeah, no, that's what the dude on the skateboard was trying to do, right?
Yeah, that's a little, like if I were in that situation, I would try to, do anything I could to defend my right to live and to get away from these people, because
but you also wouldn't shoot. I mean, okay, you want to defend your right to life. Why do you? Okay, this is actually really interesting, and I don't know if this analogy works perfectly, and this is kind of just coming off of what I was just kind of thinking of. People often like to say, and I'm not saying you guys are saying this, because I think you are more rational than the average conservative who's trying to discuss these situations. But if we're looking at this from the standpoint of, if he had just complied with officers, then it wouldn't have been an issue. Well, I mean, if only he hadn't traveled 200 miles from his house to go protect property that wasn't even his own with a semi-automatic weapon that he wasn't even legally allowed to obtain, then this wouldn't have happened.
Well, and
that's where we all agree, because we agree that the events leading up were completely unethical. There's no excuse for him. He shouldn't have been there. He shouldn't have had a gun. But right when you're in that situation, I think everything changes, because you have to put yourself in that spot and say, if I'm there, somebody's charging at me, another is starting to charge at me, there's a gun at a distance, what do you do?
That was after, yeah. The reason the gun doesn't work is because the gun was pulled after he had already shot the dude who threw a Coke bottle at him and was chasing him. This is where it comes, because as soon as you shoot someone, and as soon as that shooting is clearly illegal because of the no stand your ground laws in the state of Wisconsin, yes, you are legally allowed to go after that person. That's why, what was it called? Even after you shoot someone, even after he would have unloaded the gun on him, someone could have shot him. The same way after Parkland, because Nicholas Cruz, the perpetrator in Parkland, after literally just went to a McDonald's, it would have been legal for anyone to shoot him because he was an active shooter at that time. So you would be legally allowed to shoot him at the time. So the dude who had the gun, yes, he was posing a threat. Was it an unethical threat? No, because he had already shot and killed one person, and it wasn't in any way under Wisconsin law self-defense.
The thing with me is that he actually tried to call 911 for the first guy he shot, correct? And he was trying to help the person. It was the first person he shot, the bald guy, correct? That's what I got from the video.
I saw. Video.
Yeah, I don't quite remember who the first one was, but yeah, I do remember he ended up calling police. I think the interesting part about that was when he called police, they kind of just went right by him and didn't, do anything after people had said he was the one who was shooting him.
From what I don't know the full, like, what happened exactly, because it's really dark and hard to tell, but then he called 911, then he started running for the guy, and then a whole crowd comes after him. Mm-hmm. And then people start attacking him, and then he shot back.
Yeah.
Is that okay? So yeah, I do not agree with the intention of why he was there, but in that specific scenario he was in at the moment, I feel like that he was justified in protecting himself.
Yeah, unfortunately under Wisconsin law, that's not the case, but I mean, I understand your ethical justification for what he did while not agreeing with it, but yeah.
I don't know if he's going to be charged or not, but I wish for the best for him. It's kind of sucks that I almost feel like he became like a symbol. Like, I feel like it was almost like he was targeted to be this person to be attacked by like a lot of people, to say, oh, this guy he's white. They try to assign him like with white supremacy. I don't know for sure if he's not. And then it's like a perfect scapegoat to, their narrative even more in terms of
what narrative?
Narrative in terms of like, I don't know, but I was kind of going.
Oh, you're all good. I think that I would say I feel bad for the kid? Not really. I don't. I think that, if you come, to an area open carrying at a protest for, whatever reason, I mean, one, you're illegally not even allowed in carrying at one, that age, and two, without, firearm owner's identification license, then you know what? You are, one, clearly breaking the law, and two, doing something, I guess, in a sense, to like invoke fear. It doesn't really make sense. One, why he would be talking with the militia group, and then afterwards be going after these, necessarily going around brandishing his weapon. So this situation started because he originally just started like walking towards the protesters. I mean, that's the interesting part about the situation. And then they started, hey, look, a dude is walking at us with a gun strapped across his chest. I mean, what if you were to say that the same way that Jacob Blake was reaching in, grab the supposed knife that's what he was reaching for out of the car, be considered a threat? Could you not consider that someone walking at you, actually multiple people, because there are more people behind him, walking at them with a loaded semi-automatic weapon would be considered that same sort of threat that they would be able to respond to?
Yeah, the difference is I feel like if someone was walking towards me with a gun like that, I would run the other way, not run towards him.
I mean,
I don't think
I'm
that's
not
a real
justifying
smart
what they're doing. I'm not saying what they did was necessarily complete, justified. But I think that when we're looking at this from, you clearly, if you display deadly force against someone, in my opinion, I think that him clearly open carrying and walking directly towards them with the gun was a display of deadly force, you immediately just, you know, invoke that sort of response that can happen towards you. And if that happens towards you, if the first thing that had happened is the dude had come at him with a gun, then I would have said, all right, fine. You know, if he had, you know, unloaded on the dude with the gun first, then I think the situation would be much different. The difference is it was a dude who threw a Coke bottle at him and then was running at him. Like, I don't agree with what he did there, but you can't unload a semi-automatic weapon on someone because they are throwing a Coke bottle at you and running at you. Like that's not proportionality of force. And I think, you know, we may just disagree there, but I think that, you know, after that situation happened and he killed someone, then the entire situation breaks loose and anyone is able to try to neutralize that situation.
Unfortunately, in that situation, it gets really tense and there's a lot of emotions running high, and it could spark at any moment in terms of violence. And if you're in that situation, like, I have never been in a riot or a mob like that, but dealing with people who are about to attack me as a security officer, I definitely, like, it's hard to think in that situation, you know?
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm curious for you, because you're a security guard, right? Mm-hmm. Of that sort. Is there, I don't know if you're personally, like, actually armed with a weapon or a firearm at your job.
I have a taser.
Taser. Okay. Are there specific protocols in which you are, like, set in which you can and can't use the taser?
Taser is only used when you are in life or death situation.
I agree.
And especially, like, from what I was taught in taser training, because you have to take a mandatory class before you carry it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're backed up against a wall and a guy has a knife on you, or a gun on you, or something, like anything that is going to, like, kill you or seriously injure you, then you're allowed to pull it.
Does a Coke bottle being thrown at you and someone running at you, hypothetically at your place, if someone threw a Coke bottle at you and then started running at you, would you be allowed to use a taser?
With a Coke bottle, I don't think so. I probably would have dodged it.
Why would you be allowed to use a gun? That's my question there, is that if we realize that a taser is not even proportionality of force to someone running at you and throwing a Coke bottle at you, then I think we can clearly state that a firearm is exceedingly against that use of force.
And I said before, with how it started with him shooting at people, I think was very ambiguous and very gray. And
well, that's what we were discussing, right? Because the first shot was someone throwing a Coke bottle at him and then running at him. So in that situation, if he acted in that nature, then, you know.
I heard it was a Molotov cocktail, but then there's the problem with that is that, like I said before, there's a lot of misinformation with this stuff going on.
Yeah.
That's why I'm curious also about when the gun was pulled. Because that is what really is the deciding factor.
And how I watched the video. Yeah. How I watched the video and what I saw and what I read was that the Coke situation ensued. He shot the dude who was running at him and throwing the Coke bottle. And then the dude with the gun pulled it on him after he had already shot someone. So
the first one I'm unclear on. The second two, or the two other ones, I feel like was in self-defense, especially with the gun.
Well, so that's the thing, is as soon as you shoot someone, and if we can agree that the first situation he did not have grounds to use lethal force, then the other two situations become irrelevant, because those people become responders to an active shooter. It's the same thing as if you're in a Walmart and someone starts unloading a gun on people and just starts shooting, you have the right to try to take that person down.
That's where the morality standpoint comes, because I can't say for certain that I wouldn't have done the same thing had a grown man charged me.
Oh, and I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is the morality standpoint. I'm just saying it's not legal, and he legally could not have done that. So and that's why I was kind of talking with Nathan a little bit about the proportionality of force, how, you know, he talked about if someone comes running at him and throws a Coke bottle at him, is he allowed to use his taser? And he said no. So I think that's interesting. Okay, then why are we expecting this dude to be able to use a semi-automatic weapon on someone who does the same thing? So, you know, I think that just becomes interesting.
Was he trying to do anything else to him other than a Coke bottle?
He threw a Coke bottle at him and then started running at him and, like, trying to tackle him.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's the problem. I feel like it's very unclear because, the Coke bottle, I wouldn't say would be, you know, an okay or a go signal to use deadly force, but the charging and ready to tackle him, you don't know what's in his hand. It's dark. It's like really highly emotional, intense situation.
Absolutely.
And I feel like since he's 17 too, I feel like he made a rash decision in terms of being there.
He shouldn't have a firearm.
Yeah.
Which we agree on that, but that's where the subtext of this comes in. Human beings are not meant to have to make decisions like this. We're just cognitively not built like that. And so that comes into place with both sides, with police and with people that are trying to, whether resist arrest or escape. You're going to see a lot of bad decisions being made, not prudent decisions being made just because of how short the amount of time is that you have to make them.